Wanna talk? So let's talk. Yeah. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
Welcome back, my friends. It's Talk to Solomon time. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to introduce everyone. We're just going to get back into our discussion. Dr. Alan Keyes is our guest. My co-host is Police Chief Steve Davis and Brent Johnson from freedomradio.us. A state senator released a picture of his son, Sean, who yesterday in his own house heard some commotion late at night, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, walked out and saw some people trying to take his Romney-Ryan sign. And he said, hey, that belonged to you, put it back. And the people did. But then they turned around and attacked him and beat him, substantially. I had the same thing happen in my yard with one slight difference. I had a sign in my yard. Someone came in and they were painting swastikas on it. It was a Republican sign. My son, who I would tell you is Godzilla with curls, noticed them. He's up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm not. He went out and he interacted with them. That's a nice word. He said, basically, what the F are you doing? You're doing this in my house, and I'm going to rip your head off. At which point, the two guys there proceeded to poop in their pants and cry. Now, I call that being prepared. Others might call that being insensitive. I am from the school, not unlike Dr. Keyes, not unlike Brent Johnson, not unlike Chief Steve, that says, don't go looking for trouble and give people the benefit of the doubt. But if and when you need to stand up with everything you've got. Because he who is the most convinced usually is victorious, because most people don't really get to the point of exchanging blows. It does happen, but not normally. Now, with that, I want to talk about a slightly different topic, and that is your driver's license. Now, you might say, Solomon, where are you nuts? No, listen. I want you to think, and maybe even look, and see if it says organ donor on your driver's license. Now, Dr. Keyes knows where I'm going. They just had a case where they were getting ready to disconnect the life support and harvest the organs of this kid, and he woke up literally a short time before they were going to murder him under the so-called guise that he was brain dead. If you have organ donor on your driver's license, if you have a stubbed toe and they take you to the emergency room, that emergency room doctor can say you're not going to make it, can harvest your organs and kill you because you've given him permission or her permission to do that. I'll start with you, Dr. Keyes. I'm not hearing Dr. Keyes.
Sorry. Sadly, Stan, I think you're right. But it seems to me that it's also symptomatic of a larger problem that I've kind of talked about a little bit before, but which I often reflect on these days as I read reports like this coming in about what's going on in our medical sector, reports of things that are happening with vaccines and other things of this kind. How is it possible to have confidence these days in what's going on in our sort of medical health sector? It took a long while, by the way, and every now and again, I love the old Westerns. You know that, right? I've said that before, probably ad nauseum. But I think, for instance, of the Gunsmoke, the old Western, and Doc Adams. And they used to occasionally do shows where they would be dealing essentially with how hard it was for these medical practitioners to win the trust and confidence of people who really didn't understand, didn't have much experience of the possibilities of modern medicine. But they worked at it, and they built it up, and they built it up in the context of that old understanding, the Hippocratic Oath, the do no harm, the understanding that the medical profession was about caring for people and protecting and saving life, and that was it. There was no other admixture of anything. Is that true anymore, Stan?
Hell no.
Let's not even talk about the fact that this money imperative we've already spoken of in other areas has deeply, deeply corrupted what goes on in the medical sector. Let's not even talk about that. That's true. A lot of people know that. I think that's a part of the problem. But let's talk about the fact that, for first, the overarching issue that we're trying to treat the murder of nascent children like a medical practice. So you have this wholesale push on to pretend that it's okay to go out and murder kids in the womb, that this can be part of the medical profession's understanding. What happened to that rule about doing no harm? Because it seems to me that the very definition of abortion is that you got to harm somebody. It was one of the reasons why it was banned all through the history of medicine, and the people who took that oath didn't practice that kind of stuff. But no, now we want to define it as part of the medical practice and assume that that's okay. Then we get into these people who have been talking in the context of Obamacare about how we've got to essentially, start making these cost-effective decisions like human beings were worn-out machines, right? And surely you don't want to invest any more money in that old worn-out grandma over there. To let old worn-out grandma go creaking off to the grandma graveyard, and we'll take care of the new model cars that we can really get more mileage out of. That's the mentality that these people are talking about for the health sector. Do you think, Stan, that this inspires trust? And when are we going to wake up and realize, and when I say we, I mean all people of good conscience, all people who think this is an outrageous travesty, when are we going to wake up and realize that the root of the ability to trust in those who can either cure you or kill you with the knowledge that they have is that you know that they are committed as a matter of moral conscience and spiritual integrity never to abuse their art. That was why that oath was so important, and why it was taken for thousands of years, and why it became ever more important as the knowledge became greater. And now we're just casting it aside, and they want to pretend that all our problems are about money. That's not a money problem there, Stan. That's a problem of trust that arises from the breakdown of the moral foundations of that trust, which used to be part of the ethos that governed in the medical sector, and that has now been put aside. And I think we're going to have to tackle this, Stan. I know that we're not right now dealing with leaders who want to talk about things like this because they've all money-minded and want to pretend that they can solve our problems by, as Nixon used to say, throwing money at them. It's all a lie, because this is a problem you can only solve by restoring the sense that there's something more to self-respect in human affairs than how much you got, and that how you use your God-given talents and abilities to respect God's will for life and justice, that plays an important part of it. And we've basically allowed that to go, and we're even listening to people now in the Obama faction and other areas who want to systematize that abandonment. So we'll start culling the herd. So that Bill Gates and these people who think the carrying capacity of the earth has been way exceeded and want to cut the human population back to maybe half a trillion people overall, maybe they can have their way because we no longer put that value that we ought to put on God's great gift of life.
Let me ask you to comment, Chief.
Well, first of all, Dr. Keyes, as always, is very eloquent and very great in his description of what's going and what's transpiring. But what I hear him say, and what I want to add, is that Obamacare is evil, and it's evil on many levels. And it starts with taxes, where we take away people's earned money and their livelihood. And it goes on to freedom, where it disrupts our freedom. And then it goes on beyond that with the death penalties you mentioned, where it's not only going to decide our liberty, but how we're going to die. And so then, as this morphs even farther, what I see is Obamacare will push away any physicians that have any moral values whatsoever. All that's left to treat us will be Dr. Kevorkian, who really doesn't care if we live or die. Matter of fact, we prefer that we die to make it easier on their job.
And people who are mentally challenged, people who are physically challenged.
And the grandma that the Democrats say Paul Ryan's going to throw over the cliff, they're just going to pull the plug on grandma. So in my opinion, if Romney Ryan, if all they get accomplished in 4 years is repealing Obamacare, I think that would be a great accomplishment.
Brent?
I take issue with the comment, our leaders. We do not have leaders. America is not a society in which we have leaders. We are the leaders. You and me and Alan and Steve and the American people. We have public servants. And these servants have been very, very poor servants indeed. And with all due respect, Alan, you cannot eliminate the concept that it's all about the money. We have allowed in our midst a society in which money comes first. Making money is the first and foremost value in that society, in that culture. And that is what attracts the kind of people that you're describing, who perpetrate such absolute atrocities, because there are no morals that are more important to them than the making of money. The love of money is the root of all evil, because when you love money more than anything else, you will do anything for that money. And until we change that, and I understand you said at the beginning you don't want to talk about that, but until we actually change that value system, none of this can ever change, because you'll continue to attract people who say, by this position I can make money, I can get control, I can exercise power. And as long as those are the guiding forces in our society, this will happen, and it will continue to happen. It will never stop, no matter what laws you pass, no matter who you elect, until the people themselves change the value system. I don't know how to accomplish it, but I know it has to be accomplished if we are to extricate ourselves.
Well, Brad, I didn't want to leave the impression, I hope I didn't give the impression that I thought that was not an important factor in what is going on, because I think it is. And it's probably the predominant expression. You're absolutely right. So if I gave that impression, I didn't mean to. But I guess I was focusing on what I think is the solution. In other words, it is true that that obsession with money, which is a rubric of basically having no value except what money can buy, right? So there's nothing in the sense of your conscience and right and wrong that then limits your ambition and gives you a sense of what are the right things and what are the forbidden things to do with the power that money makes possible. How do you reestablish that sense of good conscience? And I think that one of the first things we have to do is we have to be willing to engage in the discussion of those issues that are symptomatic of our abandonment of conscience, and reintroduce people to the fact that societies can't function unless we are willing to think through and act upon common principles of right and wrong.
All right, I want to swing this a bit, but really not much. Let me read a statement, and then you can all guess who made it. The issue, just a minute, frankly, I had thought that at the time Roe was decided, that's Roe v. Wade, there was concern about population growth, and particularly growth in populations that we don't want to have too many of. Does anyone recognize that statement? By the way, it was an honest statement. It is the thought process of the majority. Listen to this carefully, because I'll get hate mail. And I'll get hate female, by the way. This is the thought process of the majority of liberal Jews. And this statement was made by a liberal Jew, and she happens to be a Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. If you understand Yiddish, which I do, and maybe Brent does, and you get where
I never got it.
You're one of them, you will hear that most Jews, liberal Jews, are quite racist. They don't think blacks are intelligent enough to get by on their own. They need help. Even though they might like them, they presume they're not smart. And they presume that every black child is more likely to be a criminal and or on welfare than to be a productive citizen and a contributor. Therefore, it was liberal Jews primarily, although Margaret Sanger was married to a Jewish guy, but she wasn't Jewish. But anyway, that promoted the concept, the foreign to most people's level of comfort of killing unborn babies. And Margaret Sanger said, and I will paraphrase, black people are stupid because they believe in God. If you can convince their ministers that to tell their flock that it's in their own best interest to kill their children, that's how you'll get rid of blacks. Now, she didn't like Jews either, but she didn't think they were stupid. Now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is now backpedaling almost as fast as Bill Clinton after the stained dress to say, that's not what I meant. I'm here to tell you it is exactly what she meant, and it's exactly what was and is thought by most liberal, godless Jews and many other liberal, godless people. I'll go to you first, Alan.
Well, Stan, I think it's what you described there is one of the reasons I guess I've devoted so much time and effort in the course of my life to the pro-life cause and to really trying to help people think through how it relates to the fundamental premises of our liberty and our way of life as Americans. Because I think that for all the talk and the chatter and palaver people have, there are ideas walking on two legs out there that people don't want to fess up to. And the idea that you should then trust these folks. I mean, here, and a lot of them, sadly, I think are people who go around masquerading like they care about everybody, and yet their whole goal is to get enough power in their hands so that they can implement these kind of systematically deadly approaches to human things. That's why I mentioned Bill Gates and others. I mean, these people who stand up, talk about the population problem, so-called, and then cavalierly suggest that we need to reach a stage of population that would require that about 4/5 of the human race go away. Well, go away is just a euphemism for various forms of extermination. And these people talk in these banal ways about this as if we're not supposed to understand it because we're too stupid. I guess people like me who believe in God, we're too stupid. No. It's because I believe in God that I haven't been stupid enough to buy into this stuff. And because I believe that the standard of God's understanding of justice precludes this kind of utilitarian disregard for the intrinsic dignity of human beings, and I've tried to argue to everybody who will listen that the people of this country cannot afford to let themselves be convinced by this little clique of elites to surrender the understanding that protects them against the abuses of power that will occur. And not just against black folks. Let's not kid ourselves. We have already seen the breakout now that goes beyond an agenda for the inferior breeds and basically now concludes that everybody who's not superior is inferior, and therefore the whole population of the world is going to have to be cut back. And they'll sit in judgment as to who is one of their kind, and the rest of us will only be tolerated if we're needed to give service to them. If this is the world we want to see, then we'll keep following these liberal people, Republican, Democrat, rhinos, leftist, communist, Obama faction, Romney faction. I don't care who they are. I reject their elitist philosophy. I reject their contempt for people who embrace the salutary common sense belief in the Creator that is the foundation stone of America's idea of justice. And I think that all people in America who still care about themselves and about the decent future of their children, and who still have a regard for the decent worth that every human being is capable of realizing and sustaining in their lives, I think we ought to just let these people go play in their own little sandbox and not let them take over the power of government so they can abuse our income taxes and our resources and our jobs and livelihoods in pursuit of what I think is an evil, twisted agenda that comes from the very pit of narcissistic, elitist hell.
Chief?
Belief in God is important, and I have that like Dr. Keyes, but also I believe in the Constitution. And since now science agrees that life begins at conception, I believe that our founding documents guarantee all the unborn Americans the right to life. That includes all men. These rights come from God. It goes for men and women. And so I believe that under our Constitution, we should be protecting the life of those unborn Americans rather than destroying them. And for all the women out there that claim that it's their right to choose what happens to their body, what about all the little women out there and those little unborn women? Don't they have rights too? I think they do. And
it's not your body. If you swallow a nickel, the nickel's not part of your body, it's in your body. Brent?
Yeah, I take a little bit of a different tack. I think that the people who advocate the depopulation, I think they ought to be applauded and asked to lead the way and show us the example by walking first into the execution chambers. I think that would solve a lot of our problems very, very quickly.
All right. Great comment. Now we're going to just say goodnight because we're out of time. Dr. Keyes.
Well, good night. I really enjoy it, as always. And Brant, I particularly enjoy your insights. Thanks for being here.
Brent.
And you, Alan. Thank you. Thank you, Alan. I always enjoy listening to you. I have one last comment to make from earlier, and that is the Constitution delegates to Congress, not the privately owned Federal Reserve, the power to coin money specifically valued against gold and silver.
All right.
It's the Constitution that's at.
Brent, give folks information about watching your show.
Oh, sure. You can call us toll-free at 888-385-3733, 888-385-FREE. It's a toll-free number. Or you can just go to our website, www.freedomradio.us. The show airs on Saturdays from 5 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a great show. It's called the Global Freedom Report. And go to that website, freedomradio.us, and find out all the information you need about where to listen from there.
All right. And by the way, you can follow Dr. Keyes at loyaltoliberty.com, LOYALTOLIBERTY.com. Chief?
We, the people, are making a difference. This show and our social media outlets and our conversation with our friends and family are making a difference in this election. Got 2 weeks to go. Keep it up. Let's get rid of Barack Obama.
And to all of you, thank you so much for sharing some of your time. It is very valuable with us. We appreciate your input. We look forward to you joining us again. And good night, America. Good night, everyone.
Good night.